Anywhere you go, I'll be right there. 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 I will. From the moon to the stars, you can show me the way I follow. This is who we are, who we are. Anywhere you go, I'll be right there. Anywhere you go, I'll be right there. I will. Anywhere you go, I'll be right there. Anywhere you go, I'll be Anywhere you go, I'll be right there.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, May 29th, 2017. And assuming I didn't bump my webcam just there. Oh, that seems close enough. Not that really matters. Yeah, so we are going to continue with what we were starting on, or working on yesterday. Basically, it was getting the visual style that seemed to work okay in chessboard and move it over to other maps. We also did a little bit of the art style on chessboard as well to kind of clean things up. Ooh, forgot to get water. I'll get some of that soon. Anyway, because as much as Coca-Cola is good to drink, it doesn't actually help thirst really any. Anyway, right. It looks like it doesn't actually do the randomization. There we go. Yeah, I could pause. But I've already started, so why not just do a little bit and then go for pause. I knew I forgot something. Yeah, so... Anyway. Like I said, Coca-Cola doesn't really help with thirst all that much. This current one we have is CrossStreams. We still need the base plate to go underneath the level. And at some point we're going to want to also take all these static tiles and combine them into an instance mesh. So even though they'll behave like separate meshes, we do want to have them, you know, draw individually. Which gets a bit complicated when we start doing when we create level setup helper, it sends a bunch of actors individually in the level. It'll be a bit difficult to make those actors then append the mesh instead of just having it attached to the actor, having it append a mesh to a instance static mesh component somewhere. Well, it's a static mesh somewhere. But you gotta reduce those draw costs somehow, so what can you do? Oh, and also last time we were noticing the frame was dropping a little bit, so let's take a quick look in some optimization viewports. So shader complexity here. As we can see, it's well in the good range, although it's kind of difficult to see what the good actually corresponds to. I mean, I know it's some fraction of 2000, but I mean, is this weighted for high-end PC, or is this weighted for like VR? Right? You know, what's actually try to correspond to? And under what? Because it's done by per instruction, but I don't know what they consider good and bad. We're also seeing a bit of overdraw here, so overdraw. Well, kind of overdraw. So when you have multiple, as you can see down here, when you have multiple fragments that overwrite each other but still have to be executed under the pixel shader, then you start getting to the bad side of it. Although there's not a whole lot of it. Especially not when you're looking at it like this. To some extent you're going to have to be stuck with that, so anyway. Lit mode. So before we go too far, let's go into Battle King's Court. And let us change some things around. So let's get rid of that light. Get rid of the sky sphere altogether. Light mass importance volume. We're gonna do. Oh, I forgot what it was. Crap. Actually, I wonder if we can just copy paste. Let's see here. So this one is that one there, and then that one, then that one, then that one, then that one, then that one. So let's grab these 6. Actually, we can just grab the Light Studio as well. Copy, and then we're gonna go to point volume. It's 35,000. Okay. And then we're gonna go to King's Court. Don't save. Paste. Oh, we can just paste them all. Nice. I know it serializes, but I didn't know it was actually successfully able to just, you know, once you unload and stuff. But I guess it goes in this clipboard, so that makes sense. So that was quick. So the post-process volume, I could have just copied and pasted actually from the other one, but I have it here, so might as well. Right, so ambient occlusion 0.7 and 150 radius. I'm not sure if ambient occlusion is going to start contributing to our performance issues, but you know, ambient occlusion, huh, interesting. So image effects vignette is 0.7, and then bloom is 0.6, so it's pretty close. And again, we do min and max brightness to 1 to lock it to 111 being white, 000 being black. Well, I mean 000 is going to be black. but 111 will be white. That way, when we assign a color to the aura, it will not be messed with the post-process volume. It will just appear on screen. There are other ways of doing that, such as like literally finding out where it is on the screen and not drawing it, but then sending a signal to a HUD or something to like draw on the screen the appropriate color as like a, you know, as a HUD, like literally on the top of the screen. It'll look a little bit different because you won't have that kind of depth separation. The other way of doing it, of course, is if you have, is that you can actually do depth-based, what's it called? Separate passes. I think it's called custom depth. I think. Where you actually take certain objects and you render them by themselves, like outside of the typical buffer. And that way you can use different post-processing effects and so forth for them. And that'll be fine. So you would be able to have that like actually appear on screen directly. I think it's called custom depth. I could be wrong now. And then this we're going to, do we want to keep it like that? No, we're going to delete it. Okay. And light mass importance volume. Wait, did we actually finish what we needed to do with the post-process volume yet? Oh, right, this one. Oh, lens flare. We didn't do the lens flare yet. That was the one I was missing. Okay, so intensity 0.3 because we don't want to have that mess us up too much. So now we're going to bake lighting. We'll use production quality for that because, I mean, small level and we're kind of done for now. So might as well have good quality come out of it. Oh, it's already done? Okay. Like I said, really small level, so... I guess none of these are dynamic, all these things are... Or none of these things are static, all those was dynamic besides stuff here. And I think these would store the... Yeah, okay. So I don't know why I'm getting light bleeding down there. Okay, well, whatever. Let's just keep moving on. Actually, I say keep moving on, and I'm not using the right program, because when we move on, we're going to move on to Blender. We're going to then open environments. There we are. That's what we were working on yesterday, and I was kind of stupid. It's like, oh, how do I make sure it mirrors correctly? Because, and I'm saying mirrors correctly, mirror. And I realized it is on the x equals negative y plane. So you just have to, whatever the axis you're controlling, you just set that number to the opposite, to the other one, and then probably flip a sign of some sort. So yeah, that's that was a silly challenger. So if I want this to be in line with this range here, come on. In this case, it's y negative 78, so I just have to put it to 78. And it's perfectly in line. And this one here, we have it, we set it to be in line with this guy here, right? Yeah, okay. So, negative 63, so it sets at 63 meters. And now it makes a perfect triangle. Because I was like, oh, how do I make sure it goes perfectly on the edge? And I realized it was a plane perfectly down the x negative y plane, right? Well, x negative y line, but plane if we're considering a 3D, because z is implied, right? Or I guess it'd be x equals... Yeah, x equals negative y plane, where z is unbound. Yeah, okay. Try and remember calculus, don't mind me. Right. So now we need to figure out what all that corresponds to, so we go back into CrossStreams. Oh, right, and we need to import, see if it actually imports correctly. So we're going to make our mirror. I'm trying using... Here I am trying to use Unreal Engine keyboard shortcuts in Blender. Hope I didn't accidentally do something there and mess it up. So let's do save there, and then I'm going to apply. Oh. Apply. Then I'm going to export FBX. Check it for theme, content, meshes, level CrossStreams. And I'll export like that, sure, why not? And then I'm going to revert. Oh, I need to click OK. To there, so they're not undone, because I still want to edit this. It's all good. No smoothing group, fine, sure, whatever. Meshes, level CrossStreams. Oh, okay. Zero, zero, zero. So let's do negative 100. Negative 200, okay, cool. And now rotate it around the z-axis 9 degrees. Okay, so I think it's 9 degrees clockwise. Degrees clockwise. There we are. So does that line up correctly? No, it doesn't. Oh, because it flips to 4 wide. Okay. Well, that's an easy mistake to fix. It looks like where it meets here, it wants to go. That's when it wants to go this way. Okay. So we make this 4 wide, and we make this drop down, then we do stair step, and that's all good. Okay, cool. So over here, how do we do this? Probably easiest way is to go up and then over here, and then go over here. Let's go over here. And now we have our new side here. Y is 66, so 66 meters. Bam, now it's perfect triangle. And from here is when we go back down, but that's not just yet. Okay. We go here and take this guy and this guy, and we dissolve. Because we want, well, there's no vertices. We want it to be just the one edge there. And what was it again? So when we reach this corner is when we drop down, right? But drop down on the far side, I believe. Yes, that's the far side. So when we cut this down here, and then we go 30, 60, 90, 120, and cut it out, another trough out here. Okay. How am I going to do that? Okay. Probably the best idea here is subdivide. And have it go in line with this guy here, and then move it back. Negative 12 meters. There we are. And then over here, okay. Subdivide, oops, sorry. You and you subdivide. So I can move this in line with this guy there. Then subdivide you two. And move you in line with this guy here. And then subdivide you two, have this go in line on the z-axis with this guy here. So now I have the correct trough size. Now I'm going to cut there. And now the easiest way to do it is just delete these faces and create new ones. There's probably a more direct way of doing it, but I don't care. So make sure we're set on merge. Hopefully I didn't create any weird degenerate geometries or anything like that when I did that, but save. So now we'll apply again, and then we're going to do another export. Oh, sorry. We're going to export FBX just selected objects back to does it config and just have content? There we are. And it looks like our we're accurate, I'm trying to say. But we do need to do some extra cuts. Obviously, it's not finished. Cool. Now, this is not going to be the material we're going to have it set to directly, like forever, but we're going to quickly apply this just to show. This is not what I'm actually going to have it be set as, but you know. Start style is a lot quicker than I expected it would be, and which is weird because I was intending it to be quick. So. Did that mess up my? I messed up my randomization. One thing I don't really like about foobar, and I know it's probably something I can configure, but randomization, when you skip or anything like that, it just undoes it. Spuffit is a similar thing, but well, not really. It doesn't, but it takes a bit more explanation than that. So let's start our build. Oh, when we do a node, that's a bad idea. I just realized I didn't actually assign UV maps to it. As a matter of fact, I'm probably actually going to want to, by the time I'm done, cut up the mesh into chunks to make it, you know, so I don't have one UV map or one light map for everything, because that would be a huge light map. I could cut it into smaller parts and then have that be, you know, smaller chunks. I'm not really sure what color for the voxel I should end up having for the metal trim. I'm thinking green. Green metal with green, like different colors of green and brown for the internals. I want to drop down the height a little bit more. This actually looks pretty similar to what I was expecting the green map for the outside areas and platinum and silver for the pathways. That could work too. Kind of was thinking something along that line, like actually having the path be something specific. As for the water, what I'm actually thinking is having them. This probably won't be a proof of concept demo thing unless I can do it really quick. I'm thinking of actually having it like each voxel, I would place a some sort of emitter or some sort of mesh effect where it would create water cubes and like they would tumble as cubes, like it was a waterfall falling off the side. I'm not sure if it had metal trim on them or if they would just be like cubes of water. Yeah, so I'm thinking of something like that, and that would depend on the voxel period, of course, but yeah, so add a little bit of style to it, right? It actually reminds me of something. I can't really remember what it was. Anyway, it might not be a demo thing. Depends on how easy it is to make. It sounds like it'd be fairly easy to make, but it also sounds like one of those things that could end up being a performance nightmare very quick. Because you're spawning like meshes at runtime. Cubes, but with fairly simple materials, but yeah. Now, will they be Will it be translucent kind of water materials, or will it be like solid, would it be like blue cubes, or would it, like with the same art style, or would it be blue plastic cubes or something like that, right? And the idea is they'd fall for like a second and despawn, maybe fade out, maybe directly despawn, I don't know, whatever looks cooler. Normally you want to have some sort of fade out effect for a lot of these things, however, with the art style we're going for, it might look better if we just, have it just abruptly despawn. If we have enough of them, of course. So I'm thinking I'm going to have the ground be a little bit lower, because this really limits what I can have. Like if I want to put a bridge there, the bridge doesn't have a whole lot of room. I really should have actually, if I was making this game, as not a stream product, but as an actual game product, probably would spend a lot more time on the art style, and I probably would have defined a specific height over the base plate that the tiles would be, so like how high the tiles are supposed to be above things, and in that case I would have a defined amount of room, a meter or whatever, to fit decoration between the plate and the tile, for things like bridges and other things like that. And if I wanted to then make walls or something that would appear between the tiles, I would know how much I'd have to extend above to reach the tile level and then go above that, right? I didn't do that yet, but because as y'all know, we were working on this art style for like, what, 2-3 weeks, right? And this one came like last week. Anyway, so let's grab this here. Let's try giving us an extra meter. See if that's too far down. So if it's not too far down, then we will have 3 feet to work in. PogChamp. We'd have about 3 feet to work in below the tiles. And you could do a lot of things in 3 feet, right? It's 2 of these voxels. And like I said, I'm probably going to break this up into several different meshes. Maybe every 10 vox, or every 10 blocks, so 30 meters. Kind of chopping it up into a different, like, subplate. They would always be together and it'd always move together. But if they're separate, then I can use different light maps for it. And if I use separate light maps for it, then I would be able to save on performance. It'd be easier to unwrap, and it's a lot easier to calculate, 20 256 by 256 or 512 by 512 light maps than 149.6 cluster, Okay, Parok, I'm having trouble starting with UE4, in UE with C++, my code I already know what I'm doing, but in UE. Okay. So, this requires a bit more explanation for it. And again, this is the point of the stream. The point of this stream is not to create a video game, it's to create an awesome stream, so keep asking questions like this is awesome. So you're having trouble coding in UE4 when you code, you already know what you're doing, but UE4 you don't quite know. Thanks, Barak. What else do you code? So it implies you know C++ a little bit, which is good. But what else do you know how to code? So, what are you trying to map your knowledge of onto UE4? So I can kind of get a bit of an idea of where you're coming from. C plus Java, C Sharp, yeah. So do you like make programs from scratch? So you like do public stack main or whatever, you know, C++ equivalent is. Well, in Java it'd be public stack void main PSVM, but in C++ I think it's I think it's just main void main. Oh no, it'd be in main because it returns. Let's just look here. I'm not gonna say I never needed to do a C++ application from scratch, but it's not something that typically happens. I usually am in our framework. In main, yeah, I was right. Okay. So from scratch, OpenGL projects, whatever. Okay. So how Unreal Engine works, and let's actually show the useful reference here. So this is how the I'll send this link in the chat, by the way. So I'm going to send this link in the chat. This is how the class hierarchy exists, typically when it comes to ownership for multiplayer, but it gives you a bit of an idea of what Unreal Engine does, because multiplayer and single player really doesn't make much difference. It's just you need to know this for multiplayer, because otherwise you're going to be calling methods on objects that don't exist on the machine you expect they do. So this is the kind of concept of it. So when you have the engine, you have two different things. You have one path that goes down is the world, and the other path that goes down is the game instance. The game instance is an object that does not exist in your level. It just exists in the instance of the game. So when you start the program, it launches. When you shut down the program, it shuts down. You can load levels and stuff that has nothing to do with the game instance. The game instance will stay the same. What you want to use it for typically is to have data you want persist between levels. So let's say you have a piece of dialogue, and each time you fail, you reload the level to restart everything in your state, so you don't have to worry about respawning and despawning things just when the level loads, whatever loads comes into it. But let's say you have a piece of dialogue that's tutorial, and you don't want it to appear every time you start that, restart that mission, because, it's just annoying, it's a tutorial, and you got the idea the first time. What you could do is have your object that would spawn that audio look to your game instance and say, hey, has this already been spawned before? The first time, no. Okay, so it's no. The game instance say, now I've used that audio, so it would flip a boolean of some sort. And then the object would play the audio. Then the next time you load the level, it would ask the game instance. The game instance didn't change with the level, so it would say, hey, has this already been played? The game instance says yes. Some other time the level's been loaded. So the level can then decide not to play it anymore. That's the kind of thing you'd want to use game instance for. Things that persist between a level. In Check-It, because the menu and the game levels are different levels, the game instance stores all the information required for the server and the clients to create the game scenario that the menu sets up. So the map is just... The map in the mode is just whatever gets loaded from the, like when you do the open level. But like who spawns where, like player 1 spawns on spawn 1 and 4, all that stuff I write to my game instance of the server. And on each of the clients, I assign an ID saying, hey, you are client number 1000, you are now 10,000, you are, So when you then join the level, the game instance says, this is client number 1000, and the server says, okay, this is your state. Like, this is what you want to set up your level as. So you go over there, and so forth, right? Blah, blah, blah. So, how Unreal Engine is structured is you have, the game instance, and it has local players and so forth. But it also has world, and world is the level you load. Every time, everything you do in Unreal Engine has to be in a level of some sort. It could be a menu level, which is just a black, you know, void with your UI components, if you want it to be. Maybe not. Maybe you want to have a decorative level like Bioshock Infinite, where it's actually a part of a town, and a camera flies through it, and then UI elements appear all over the place. You can do that too. Whatever. It's just a level. Persistent level, screen level, don't worry about that just yet. Long story short is, then you have actor. Everything actor is spawned into the level you're in. That's the game mode, that's the game state, that's the player state, that's the, you know, the tiles, the pieces, the player pawns, player controller, all that stuff, characters, everything is stack meshes, that's all spawned in the level as an actor. The actor can have components, which are things that are associated with an actor that give it a bit more, you know, control, like camera booms, like the mesh itself, like a collision volume or component, things like that. So it goes engine, level. There's always a level loaded whenever you're doing anything in the game. At least one level loaded. Sometimes there's multiple levels loaded if you're in a transition, but it's not important. And then actors with components and all that sort of stuff. From then on out, it's basically what do you want to do. If you want something to be multiplayer, if you want something to be in a level, if you want something to etc, 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 it has to be an actor. Actors are spawned in a level. Now what does that mean? Okay, so now you want to make a character or something. Okay, so some subclass of actor, maybe even a subclass of actor, like a player controller or something. You then want to subclass further to give the functionality you want that gets spawned in the level. What's my voice here? So from then on out, all that matters is that, as a matter of fact, game mode, game state, player controller, all that sort of stuff, engines like Unity don't have any of that. All they have is what would be the equivalent of actor, which is game object, and a whole bunch of components, and all those components then make those game objects do whatever you want. Epic and Unreal Engine go one step further and subclass actor several times to create game mode, to create game session, to create game state, create player state, to create player controllers, create pawns and characters and stuff like that, which define typical instructions that you want and like typical functionality that you want to have for that. How it's intended is that the game mode is on the server. The game mode on the server will be what your what will handle all of the rules, right? So if you want to make sure that players can't cheat, the only way you can do that is to have the server control everything, right? Yeah. So you got yourself some examples on Unreal Engine, that's kind of how you do it, but the basic concept is everything you're going to be doing pretty much is an actor, and everything else, Epic does some things to make it easier for you, and you really should use their structure in a lot of cases, because otherwise you're going to be fighting them. But theoretically, everything else from actor down could be you. You can take care of all that stuff if you want. If you want to re-implement all that stuff yourself. It's just a matter of, I want to have stuff placed in the level, do what I want to. If you want to have a door open and close, you would place a door actor in the level, and it would have a component that, monitors keyboard input, preferably actions so that people can rebind it, but that's just, user interface. you can really, if you want, you could have Unreal Engine look for the E key, and whenever it sees the E key pressed, to have that happen. But if someone wants to make the enter key because they're left-handed, or if they want to use a controller because they don't have a keyboard, then you should use an action. But right. Those are the things you'll learn as you go along. But just make sure that everything you do is actor and down, unless you do components and stuff like that. And all of that stuff is defined for your project. So now you have to think, I have a certain number of entry points for my code, tick. I've been using Unity a lot lately for another project, so I keep wanting to call it like start and stuff like that, but it's begin play in Unreal Engine and stuff like that. It's one of the problems. I keep jumping between different platforms and engines and APIs and all that sort of stuff, and I guess I'll kind of jump in my head, but whatever. Yeah, so you didn't have a lot of stuff, and you want to find out where the entry point for your code is, and then you override it, and you stick whatever your functionality is, and you build it up feature, 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 and then your game gets made, right? So in the case of Check-It, what I had to do is I had to create a game mode, which I called base game mode, that handles verifying whether a move is valid. It handles a lot of things. Let's actually look at it in here. So it overrides tick, it overrides post login, it overrides logout, it overrides handle matches waiting a start, it overrides choose player start implementation. This is so I can have everyone go to the player start for spectators at the first when I display that thing. So if you look at it when the game starts, come on. So when the game starts, there's nothing in here, so it doesn't do anything. But when it starts in chessboard, it makes all the pawns spawn right here on top of this white tile. Because there's a player start actually here. And then this is my code ticking down, and when it's done, it moves my player to the other player start that it's assigned to. That's caused by overriding choose player start implementation, which says, hey, return the actor corresponding to the player start on top of that white tile at the start, and then afterwards it's all my code. My code then just goes and says, hey, I have this function that puts up a UI element which counts down, make sure everyone loads into the game before it starts. And then when it's done counting down, I don't use Epic's code after any of that. It's all my code. My code then tells the player pawn to slowly transition to that new location. All that's my code. That's nothing to do with Unreal Engine. That's all me. So you can kind of see where the divide between Epic code is and your code is. You have certain number of entry points, which is virtual functions. If you look at it in the API documentation, here, you're gonna see this symbol. This symbol is your friend. This symbol means virtual. That means you can override and inject your own code wherever you want. So get game state. You can't really do anything with that. It'll just give you the game state. But let's say you want to let's say you want to initialize game state. Okay. Okay. Let's actually use one you're actually going to use. Post login. So let's say you want to mess with the player controller. So when a player logs into the server, on the server, this is game mode. This is only running the server. In a single player game, the single player is a server, right? you're going to get this function called when the player logs in, which is going to give you access to the player controller who logged in. And it's a virtual function, so when it's a virtual function, you can do an override, and then in your subclass, you then do super post login because you want to make sure Epic does all their work. You don't want to cut off their work, otherwise you're going to have various game crashes and glitches and other crap like that. Make sure Epic does their work first, so call your super functions, and then afterwards, you can then, or even before, if you have to do something before Epic does their work, you do the code you want to modify the player controller in that way, or modify something else based on that player controller. In my case, I call my super function, which lets post login work. And then I look in the game instance, and I see whether their app state is setting up around, and they're the player. What was I thinking? Oh yeah, I get the player controller for that player, and then I call a RPC asking it to give me its ID. So when it logs into the server, I'm wondering, hey, you just joined my game. Which one of you in the menu were you in the menu, right? Which player controller did that menu item correspond to? So I'm asking it for the ID, and then it's all my code. On my code, I then have a chunk of code that says, okay, for the player controller, return this value. And there's another chunk of code somewhere else in the game state or whatever that would then on the server say, okay, I received this value that corresponds to this person in my level setup. So I'm going to assign this new player controller, or this the settings for this player to that player controller, because I know that this person corresponds to that person. The reason why I used IDs that were random is that way I made sure that it was technically very difficult to know what the other players are, so you can't spoof the player between server loads. To be like, here's everyone's IDs, thank you. Move to next map. Hi, I'm this player. No, you're not. You're that player. They'd have to guess a random number for that to happen, so that would be harder. It's like a password thing. Anyway, long story short. Would I work for different game modes that have different key mappings? Key mappings are not done on the player controller. They're done on. They're not on the. Key bindings are not done in the game mode. They're done on the player controller typically, or character, because character is a combination of a player controller and a pawn. Anyway, so the good way to do key bindings is base player controller to override. Come on. I just completely go past it. Here. To override setup input components. It is an override. I'll show you that here. Yeah, so virtual void setup and component override. And here you then call your super function, and then you bind each action to a method. So when the action debug command, which in the editor you then set, so here, project settings, inputs. The action mapped to the debug command, which has these keys associated with it, will then be mapped to this function when base player controller is associated. If you have multiple different types of player controllers, then no problem. When this player controller is associated, that action is going to map to that function. When this other player controller is associated, that action is now going to map to this function. And it's just you to, set it up as appropriate. How game mode does play an effect on it, though, is in the constructor, you then assign a default base player control or a default player controller class for that game mode. So if you want to have a different player controller for battle, CTF, siege, or whatever, you then just need to override, to write this variable to the static class of whatever you want. So it's technically done on the player controller, but the game mode says which player controller to use. There's a lot of stuff to learn. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say it's going to be very easy for it to work. But the most important thing to realize is that from actor down, there are some things that Epic does to make it easier for you, and you want to play in their playground a little bit. But it's just making your code hook into whatever override you can hook into, have the functionality occur, and then release control back to the engine, and let the engine keep ticking on as it goes. So whenever you need something to have happen, override the correct event, inject your code, have it call other code of your code if you want, and then release control and let the engine keep going on. And next time you need an event, get that event, so forth. Get the event, so forth, right? And then we get to optimization of having that be the least intrusive event possible. So like tick calls every frame. You can do that if you want. However, you're probably gonna have some performance issues if you're doing big chunks of code in tick. Like tons and tons of raycasts, right? You can do a few raycasts. As a matter of fact, you can probably do like hundreds of raycasts, but when you start getting tens of thousands of raycasts, then you start getting problems. Start somewhere to get started, because I forget the code, game modes, player controllers, etc. Yeah, so the idea is you want to subclass game mode, player controller, pawn, and all that stuff, or character. If you don't want to do player controller or pawn, you want to use an actual base character, which behaves kind of like a third-person character. I don't know if character is good for first person. I think it is. Then you subclass that and add your functionality to wherever you need it. But if you have something like a door, or you have something like a light, or you have something like a minesweeper block, or a lot of different types of things like the level, bridges or whatever, all those stuff will just be a default subclass of actor with whatever components you want. So stack mesh component, maybe some collision components and things like that. And that will, all of that below will be your code, because you don't need to, the game mode probably doesn't need to know, maybe you want to hook through it for cheating purposes, but if you call the server-side equivalent, then, as long as you make sure the cheating code is run on a server, then you're fine. Because you don't want the client to say, here's my health now, because then someone's going to RAM hack and they're going to have health of whatever the hell they want, right? For those things like doors and whatever, you just subclass actor and you stick it in your level. And it's just a matter of making sure that, like I said, the gameplay important elements are calculated on the server side. But it's just an actor with whatever components you want. A lot of the other code is for that. Yep. And again, it's going to be, like, you're going to want to start small, make like a tic-tac-toe game or something in Unreal Engine. And then see how it works, see how, what the methods it allows for what the common hooks you're going to be using are. Blueprints don't feel complete for you. Okay, so for me, I really don't like doing blueprints in a lot of situations. Not because they're not complete, but because I don't really think too well in the visual scripting sense. I think I should get the water soon. Anyway, you can do a lot of stuff in blueprints, though. The amount of functionality they left open for you is pretty complete, such that you didn't have to make a bunch of blueprints to fit your project code. That's fine. Yeah, the problem is that it's already 10:30 almost, so I'm not sure whether I want to do an intermission or whether I want to just you know, keep working and then call it on time. And then probably drink a full one of these of water. Well, again, good coders can do a lot of amazing things in blueprints, right? But typically what I like to do for my structure is I like to have a lot of the important backend stuff be in C++, and the C++ code calls blueprint events if necessary, and then those blueprint events do what happens. Now, that's not what I end up doing in this project. This project has some really ugly parts to it that I haven't really had a chance to refactor because I'm doing everything on stream and I don't want to take it offline for a month to fix a small little bug, right? You feel you have a lot more control of C++, so do I, but that's not because blueprints are bad or anything like that. It's because I think a lot better in instruction, you know, bracketing things off, you know, doing loops by, like, you know, while condition, curly brace, right? If I was thinking in the visual scripting mindset, that'd be fine for visual scripting as well. I just don't really think like that. Yeah. But you can see some things that good blueprint developers can do. It's pretty intense, right? And there are some benefits to that, mostly if you are doing blueprints and staying in Epic's, you know, controlled environment. They can, when it comes to packaging for Linux or when it comes to packaging for Marketplace or whatever, they know that you can't do anything dangerous or anything that requires dependencies, so they can do a little bit more things and assume more things. But yeah, a lot of times, if you're trying, like for me, if I'm trying to do a big, like when I was in Blueprints, and I was trying to do a big transformation between menu element text into actual like data that it represents, those conversions I would have be a C++ method that can be called from blueprints. So I send the inputs from blueprints, C++ method gets called, and in C++ it returns, you know, this transform returns an output of whatever token I want, and blueprints takes that and goes with it, right? Yeah. Way easy for you to think in code, yeah. Same here, by a long shot. If you see some of, like when I'm doing UMG, I have to do a lot of stuff in blueprints. I'm like stuck and being like, how do I make this happen? How do I do this, right? And I have all these weird bugs when it's really something that in C++ I can do in 20 lines, right? But when you have that issue of like, I want to loop through several things, pull pieces of data out, store it somewhere, and then later on process it and transform it into this other form here, that doesn't work well for me for blueprints. I have to kind of do that in C++ or some other written language, because that's the way my brain works. Like, input, transform, return, done, right? While loops. Like, if you have loops, blueprints doesn't work well for me. I just can't see where the wires are going and whatever. You get the idea. But some people can, and some people can do some really amazing thing with blueprints without even touching C++ at all. But for me, it's typically, if I have to do anything in blueprints, which for UMG you kind of have to, which is your UI system, I try to do the linking of nodes together in blueprints. But if I have any complex transform, like I have 3 sets of strings here and I want to equal a numerator, 2 enumerators and a number here, like that transform from string to a numerator, and like enumerator number, I would just have that be done in C++. Be like, link these 3 things in here, call this method goes to C++, transform, send it out, right? And then I take the output and I keep going with the blueprint. Get the idea. So there's a quick crash course in how Unreal Engine does its stuff. But yeah, so that's how it works. And eventually you get something like this. Which is like that image, like, how do you draw an owl? Start with 2 ovals. then draw the rest of the owl, right? It's like, it's like a picture of a perfectly sketched, anyway. Now we go into CrossStreams. So here I need to move this back. Well, I need to cut this in here and leave it 600 up here. So I need to cut, like, send this back to back 300 and then cut. Okay, actually no, yeah, 300. Okay. Oh, okay. So, sorry, 900. So up 900 here, 900 back there. Cut. There we are. Okay. So solid. Edit. You know what? I think I'm actually good right now. I'm not going to use the mirror modifier. I think right now I have everything I need. So here we're going to do subdivide. So we're going to move it back here, snap, and then move it up. Oops. Undo merge. So we're going to move it back here and move it up 9 meters, sorry. Subdivide. And move it back -9 meters. And now we need to have this be -3 meters. And then do cut. So subdivide. In line with that there, then in line with that there, then move that up 3 meters. And then cut. In line with that there, in line with that there, then back 3 meters. Nice thing about voxels is that we can, we know what it mathematically should be. Matter of fact, this should be exactly 3 meters right there. Oops, no. There we are. And now that we're all merged up, I can grab you, and you, and then dissolve. Okay. Now I can go over here. And then just even just reuse this here and over here. Subdivide. I just can't reuse all of them. So 3 meters. Then subdivide this here to make this be in line with that and in line with that. Then subdivide this to make this in line with that. Then subdivide this to make this in line with, oops, make this in line with that. And then subdivide. Actually, what am I doing with this one here? This one should be over here. What? Try to do things too quickly. Oh, that's why. There we are. There we are. And now we can start inserting some edges here, so that way Blender doesn't freak out with all these faces that don't make sense. Which will probably let me dissolve this edge here. There we are. So I can subdivide these. Come on. I guess it would have been the same because it would have been right in the middle. Okay. Actually, I can just do number cuts too. Right here. Now. Actually, it won't matter anyway. And I did something stupid there. There we are. Again, trying to go too quick. Gotta go fast, right? I'm Sonic the freaking Hedgehog or something. Okay, there we are. Should be identical, but anyway, yeah, it moves and all. Here. Now, have this be in line with this here, but also move it back 3 meters. Have this be in line with that, but also in line with this. I could probably use that for guide as well, but you know. Subdivide, then subdivide. Have you be back there, you be back there. Subdivide, you be back there, you be back there. And then once again, go back here. Add some edges, even though we're not actually adding geometry, we're just defining the geometry we already have a bit better. So now the mirror plane up here, I can actually delete that because I don't need any more. There we are. So now over here, export, selected objects. And I realized you could say, hey, wait a minute. So we would like to re-import, and there we are. And because everything's aligned up on perfectly on the 3 meters, all these edges work perfectly. Come on. Okay, right, so that's this main part here. Honestly, I thought this would take me longer than a day. When really it took me like half a day with explaining things. And by day I mean stream, like 2 hours. I don't mean like an actual 8-hour day. I knew it was going to take 8 hours, but I thought it would take most of the 2. So we're kind of running up the end of our time, even though we have actually time left. So what do I want to do with this time? So my vision for this, and again, the division's only been around for like 2 weeks, because we just came up with it 2 weeks ago, is that we'd have, or maybe it's 3 weeks for this, is that we'd have, in the level, the menu wouldn't actually be the UMG widgets that we have right now. The menu would probably be actually 3D objects in the scene that kind of move around based on controller input. Part of that so we don't have to constantly switch between UMG context and game context. It would all be game. Make it a bit easier than switching after 4.14 really mess with things. I think it's 4.14. And also look kind of interesting too, because we wouldn't be just, you know, having fonts of things. We'd actually have, like, you know, cubes and blocks representing letters appear. I'm thinking of actually having most of the lettering be like solid metal, like the piece would be, but in the shape of letters or whatever. Sorry, I have to sneeze, but I'm not really. Anyway, right, probably too much information. Anyway, and we have that, you know, be floating around. And then as you like choose a level, the base plate would be a dynamic object in this, like in the scene that you'd see floating around. And then you select it, and that would make it, you know, falling from the sky, and you'd see it start to load. And then at that point, the level switch would happen as seamlessly as possible, even though we can't really do it seamless because we have to change the game mode. And, you know, after some loading scene, you'd pop in and you'd have this static, you know, lit plate be the actual level you'd play around in. So for performance reasons, the lighting will change after the load to be whatever the high-end quality is, but, you know, in the menu you'd see the level pop in. The disadvantage of that is that the menu would have to be aware of all of the possible levels, which makes it a bit difficult for mod support. We'd have to have some way of allowing the mods to inject their own, well, it works by content browser IDs, but you get the idea. We have to have the mods have some way of injecting their own plates into the way the level loads things. It's the menu, I mean. So that way when it loads down, or when they preview it in the menu, they'd see their mesh. This would mean that we would, well, it would probably mean we would have to, unless we start doing things like, you know, accepting data from server and then, you know, inspecting it. It means we'd probably have to have mods be installed before the game is launched. That can have some positive and negative consequences, but we'll figure that out later. a long time from now because we're not anywhere near shipping a game yet. We're getting surprisingly close to shipping an Itch.io though, so at that point I could take it offline, depending on how things are, whether I get a contract, whether, you know, I work on another project, something like that. Whether a publisher comes up to me and says, hey, we like this game idea, you want to whatever. We'll see on all of that. A lot of that has nothing to do with me. I'm actually curious to see what you all would think. So I have quite a few long-term viewers in chat right now, and no one really seems to be hosting me right now. At least Twitch hasn't said so. What would your all opinions be if a publisher did approach me, or I approached a publisher or something to work on a you know, have Check It be a actual game that would get a little backing behind it? Ultimately, the decision comes to me. Like, if, you know, someone gives me a big amount of money, or they help a different part of the project or whatever, then the final say comes to me. But what would you all think about that if I were to have a publisher deal? Needs a Linux build. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Mir would want a Linux build. But would I be alienating some fans if I would to get a publisher? Yeah, Linux would be very important. Ideally, if I had infinite resources, and it made sense to put infinite resources into the game like this, I don't know, if it's something only 100 people are gonna play, it's not gonna, you know, it wouldn't make sense. But if I had infinite resources and it was gonna be like a giant esport, and, you know, there's big names behind it or whatever, then it would make sense. Like, I would want to have it be Linux, Windows, VR, and web, and mobile. Although web, you know, I'd want to have it be on all of the major open platforms, and the gameplay would scale between VR and mobile pretty well, because you're not really doing a whole lot of intense interactions. You're just saying, start here, go here, maybe play card, right? You'd have some implementation details, like how to set up the menu or whatever, but apart from that, it should be cross-play pretty easily. But yeah, no, I think it would actually work pretty well on all those major platforms. Mac, if there was a publisher deal and they want to do Mac, then yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with doing Mac. It wouldn't be something I'd choose ahead of time, though. I don't really want to exactly buy a Mac to release on a Mac. Particularly when the Mac can, you know, run Linux and stuff very well. Now, if Linux didn't exist, then I would definitely consider the Mac, but Linux has existed. Right, so, yeah. Anyway, that's all kind of amusing. I just want to know what people thoughts would be. So yeah, my thoughts are to have at the edges, so back there, also here, here, and all the way up there, to have per box of size, just kind of like boxes fall off in like a waterfall and then kind of despawn. Anything neat in news come up this week since Wednesday? Well, this week is Computex, so there's going to be a lot of news coming up, especially tonight. I can't really talk about stuff that hasn't already been announced yet, but if you look on PC Perspective, put up, I think, like 4 or 5 product announcement posts. So yeah, Computex is happening, so yeah, it's going to be a big event for that. Then next week's going to be E3, I believe. So it's gonna be busy on that. You know what? Long Wednesday stream then. I am assuming. Oh. I think I should have done more there. I think it was intended to have that be separate. To go right up to the wall. So what do I want to do? I want to make it asymmetric by making these go from 3 to 2. Well, from this and that to just one over there. So that way the wall would kind of come in like this. So cut out this voxel and this voxel, basically. Or do I want to have objects here poke up? Because the reason for this is to prevent people from jumping across here and, you know, affecting here, even though they have to get their king all the way through this way to even matter, but you get the idea. Yeah. So do I cut this out, or do I make something appear here? I kind of like the little, you know, warm glow from the bottom that the sunlight gives. I'm glad I ended up putting it in. Kind of like this here. The gold look of it. Oh, I was also going to say as well, let's, now we have this here, let's actually package out a new version of Check It. That's Guy Knight said I was working on a chess game when I last watched you in February of 2016. Same game. This is it. It wasn't a chess game, though. It was a game that is like chess, but turn-based strategy. This is a 64 by 64 grid level. So I'll show you here. Go to menu level, main menu, here. This is a chessboard level. 1 versus AI. The art style changed quite significantly since then, but, you know, that's actually what we're working on the last month or so. So this is like chess, but slightly different, like you can only move one out here. Oh, it's not going to give me the quick kill. Okay. Or will it? It lets me quick kill. Okay. So there's the chess level. And again, this is all kind of placeholder stuff. Everything's done on stream, so for the UI, I mean. So it's you know, not the prettiest, but this is a whoops. Yeah, okay, so you're talking about, okay, here we are. Probably talking about this then, when it loads. This is the Unreal Engine 4.9 thing. So you walk in here and there's a castle and all sorts of stuff. You're probably talking about this. So when you move here, you can move forward and towards the knights here. Well, remember this layout when I show you this. That was using Infinity Blade assets. We are now using a different art style, but the actual layout of this level is very similar. I made a couple gameplay tweaks, but it was copied from it otherwise. So this is what it looks like now. So for a consistent art style and one that was easy to make, I decided to kind of go with a kind of voxelish look, similar to kind of this thing here, with kind of the Mirror's Edge trials surrounding. So basically the idea is that you're in a kind of a virtual space and the level kind of loads in as a plate and the tiles appear and you're playing. Yeah. It'll kind of be this kind of art style here. So this is like this base plate only came in today, right? Like, so this is very early days, but we're trying to make it kind of like a when am I gonna be finished? When am I gonna sell it? Let's see here. Move this, but can't move it. Not range. Okay. When is it gonna be finished? No idea. So the problem that's taking so long is that I'm doing all development on stream. So that limits me to about, for the last like 7 or 8 months or so, 3 days a week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, for about 2 hours. So between around 9 Eastern to around 11 Eastern. And everything that's been done on the game, I've been opening the project and looking, but I haven't been saving anything. Outside at that time, it's all happens on that time. So if you watched every stream, you would see everything that entered the game, and some cases then left the game because it was ugly or terrible, from start to finish. How close are we to being done? The idea is that we have a proof of concept demo we're going to release, probably around, well, relatively soon. That would go to Itch.io, and that would be the everything done on stream. Not exactly promised, but kind of promise I made. And then from then on, I would be able to, you know, develop it individually, like off stream and so forth. How close are we to an Itch.io? This art style is coming together pretty quick. After that, we only have a little bit more stuff to do, and then it should be good enough for a free demo. From there, who knows what's going to happen. A publisher may say, hey, let's make a game out of this, in which case I'd say, you know, the price is right, let's do this, right? In which case, who knows? If not, it could be something I end up doing on my own. It'll go a lot quicker than it has been right now, but the target will be a lot higher too, if I want to make it something I can sell. It's also possible that I might get in touch with, you know, a VR company of some sort, and hopefully, and, you know, maybe have them commission a VR version of it. If that's the case, then could be awesome. That could take a little bit more time though, but yeah. So yeah, so if you're wondering when the first release is gonna happen, it shouldn't be that far off. I was actually targeting a few months ago, but yeah. Only so much can happen when you only do it a few times per week, right? But other than that, I mean, we're rounding the final stretch of what I consider to be worthwhile for a initial free demo. And then from that point on, whatever commitments I end up having will lead to me developing this game off stream in that direction, or someone else developing the game in that direction if they want. Someone else wants to take it off my shoulder, right? And from there, we'll see, right? Who knows? So yeah. And it's also possible that the stream could get very popular, in which case I'll have the stream. I mean, I'm always going to do a stream. As long as I have control of the game, I'll do a stream. But I'm not sure, you know, how much I'll end up doing, right? On stream. I do want to keep the stream, though, for, you know, having fan interaction and so forth. And it's something that not a lot of people are doing, so you get the idea. And it's not like it's a, you know, plot-heavy narrative game either. I can show literally everything that happens in the game. There's not going to be any spoilers because it's a game, right? You... Spoiler, the king dies in the end for someone, right? Such a lame joke. Anyway, yeah, so... You know, it's not like I have, you know, I can't show this on stream because it would be a plot spoiler. I don't want to ruin the game for anyone who wants to play it, but it's just a game, right? Everything's going to be different every time you play it. But yeah, I get the idea. And then from there, I'll, as soon as I take it offline, pretty much immediately I'm going to work on a Linux build of it. It should be as simple as building the engine with Clang and then exporting. But I haven't done it yet, so I'm not exactly sure. If that's the case, then it should be fairly quick and simple to do. And pretty much as soon as I have an itch.io done, I'd be able to then make the same build for Linux. I don't make any platform-dependent calls anywhere, but it's possible that I might have some effects not work in Linux. Although, after I stopped using Palm, and I started using normal maps for bumping, I don't see anything that would not work on Linux. As a matter of fact, I don't see anything that would not work even on web. So it should be fairly simple to port to Linux. It should just be export, but I could be wrong. It's not like I'm doing things like calling, you know, Windows Time API directly in my project code or anything like that. I'm always using FX API. And I'm not using any really experimental stuff that I know of. So yeah. And that's kind of how the game... oh, good. I thought I messed up my set scene, but I just changed the scene. That's good. Okay. Because when you change a scene, or when you mess up your scene, there's no undo states in OBS. I wish there was. Yeah. Kind of like how it reflects off of the night, even though this does make it difficult for me to change my exposure settings. What I was going to say earlier is that if we have a little bit of time left, which we did, I would actually publish out a version of this. But spent all that time talking, so probably not. And then the queen can move, you know, anywhere along here, there, stops there. So the queen stops when it's either out of range or whether there's a disabled tile, or if there's something blocking like a friendly piece, or if it eats, it can't then keep going for it past it, right? That's how recursive moves work, like a bishop, rook, queen. Oh, and I should also mention as well, the way all this is set up for pieces is just general, like it can move in this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction. It can recurse. It's set with this spawn. It has points to this mesh in the content browser, etc., etc., etc. All presets for bishop, queen, knight, king, rook, and pawn. If I want to make a new piece, or I want to change piece, or allow mod piece, whatever, as long as it fits in the actual piece state's set of parameters, there's nothing stopping me from just creating a new preset for that new type of piece. Or if I want to, I can even actually go inside here and modify the piece state to make the queen move like a knight, right? There's nothing stopping me from doing that the way it's set up, which is designed to be for modding purposes, of course. But yeah, it also means that there is no limits on that, so hopefully that will be an advantage. So if I want to make a piece, like if I want to give the queen control range, I could. I don't want to because that would be gameplay breaking. Have the queen be able to slowly move its way wherever it wants on the map. That wouldn't be good. But let's say I have like a you know, a future unit where it would be like a command horse where the knight can, you know, the knight itself would give its own control range so it can move anywhere it wants to. I could do that if I want to, but I don't. Yeah. One disadvantage, though, is that control range is by range, so it wouldn't just be those specific tiles for it. It would be, it would unlock all the tiles around it for that range, so a queen could use it to kind of jump past the king range a little bit if the knight has a little bit extra, but again, that is, you know, if I can manipulate the state to do what I want, I can do that. So anyway, so that's here. The other spawn is cross spawns over here. And there's a third spawn, which you can disable if you want to, but I left it enabled just for visual reasons. Up here where it's blue. And you can control 4 knights, 4 pawns, and 2 rooks. Which is less than what the other pieces have scattered around the level, but the other teams have to go around the level to get them. Whereas this team, if it wants to, it can just barricade its front door with the pieces it has and hope it makes a better trade. Ideally, it would have a detachment go out and start picking things off wherever the other teams aren't, but I would actually need to give this another king for that to actually be practical, but that was kind of how it's intended to play, though. So these two are people can gang up on them if they want to, as long as this detachment isn't where they are, then it can get some free kills and make its long-term game a little bit easier. Or it can just barricade and hope to win the short-term game after the other teams go and pick up everything it needs. Unless the other team rushes when it's not home. Right? That could be a problem for it. Anyway. So now you see how the game is played. I was going to package out a version of it, but I think I'm going to save that for next time. Oh, crashed. Close with that setting. I hope I didn't lose anything. I think I just saved just recently. Like, I think... Oh, yeah, I had to save just before I started the game, because otherwise I had to switch to the main level. So that's fun. And here we're going to save this, too. So next time I'm going to be probably splitting this up into smaller meshes, probably, so a 64 by 64, what engine? Unreal Engine 4. This is Unreal Engine 4. Yeah. Right, so probably next time we're going to be splitting up the CrossStreams into separate meshes, and we're going to use that to light map. And then language is C++. So Unreal Engine 4, there are some third-party, like Microsoft did one, languages for C# and stuff like that for project code. But Unreal Engine really wants you to use C++ for the back end, or Blueprints, which is their visual scripting set. No matter if you use C++ or not, you're probably going to use Blueprints for at least for a little stuff, like level events at the very least. But if you want to do hard, actually coding, it's going to be C++ for a lot of it. Unless you use a Microsoft custom fork of the engine that does C#. And there's also a another user project to integrate it with V8 from Google for JavaScript. But it's C#. It's C++ for me. There's a couple things in Blueprint's visual scripting, but it's mostly C++. Although Unreal Engine's version of C++ really uses a lot of macros and stuff. Well, that's funny. Huh, this actually does work. So I can probably delete that, but I'm not going to do right yet. Yep, so I guess that's it for today. Thanks everyone for watching. I normally stream Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. 9 p.m. Eastern, give or take, usually 9:15, 9:30, till around 11 p.m. Eastern. It's now 11:07 p.m. Eastern. And that's 3 days a week, and that's it. So, and all development's done on streams, so if you see me every week, it's always, like, you know, if you watch every episode, you're going to see everything that happened in the game. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a good evening.
Yeah.